somewhere down like a rabbit hole, and then I'll get lost to track of time.
Yeah.
Hello,
Sometimes
Professor Cowell.
it's
Hi.
helpful. Oh, hey, how are you?
No, no, please. Honestly, I like listening to this.
Oh, we were just discussing whether or not it's important to or what's the benefits of like looking up words at the beginning while you're reading, or like waiting to try to get to see if you can figure it out from the context of the
Haha.
section, and then going back and like looking up words that you don't know afterward.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
guess what's your
guys.
opinion on that?
I'm honest to goodness. I'm not trying to flex doing that. I really don't. I read so often. I read so many books that I think I subconsciously just kind of write like the books that I read. Or I try to.
Yeah.
And not to mention, I also know that on the side in my peripheral vision, I know that at any given time my deans could ask to see my work. And so there's an element in which I'm writing for them as well, to be honest. Yeah. Um,
I mean, I'm learning new words,
well,
so
good.
it's helpful.
Well, good. Well, thank you. But what I should do at the least is, and I've been trying to do it lately, is put an explanation of the word in parentheses right after the word. That's the very least I could do. And so I'm beginning to do that
Been
because yeah,
helpful, yes.
I go back to my old self as an undergrad in college. I don't use a lot of these words, for sure. So yeah, but I hope so. I hope that you're, oh, okay, I got it because I love learning new words myself. I hope that there's a plus side to it. But by all means, I that's the very least I should do is put in parentheses a basic explanation of what I'm trying to say when I use a bigger vocab word. All right, so I promise I'm working on that. Um, but yeah, I look forward to this class, guys. You guys are great. We're doing the War of 1812, and I don't have the same magic on the War of 1812. There's not a lot of good discourse, right? Like back and forth on two different theses about this war. There just isn't. At least I haven't been able to find it. And so this is a lower level learning assignment where you just watch a video and you answer the questions. So it's basic kind of regurgitation of basic facts. And I'm not proud of that. Matter of fact, I'm glad that I only have one assignment in which we do that this way. But I'll keep working on it. I'll keep trying to get my hands on something that's argumentatively clever about the War of 1812 as I should have by now. So let's see here. Share. I had to the last time I went on the last time I went on the Zoom, it made me upgrade the level or whatever you would call that of this program, and then it didn't automatically allow me to share. And so I had to get help from someone to be able to find information on how to be able to share information. Uh, but so if you'll bear with me here, I don't, let's see. Hopefully I could just do this. Although I already have, oh, here we go. I was gonna say I already have them open. Um, War of 1812 assignment. Okay, can you guys see that okay? Okay, good. So with the War of 1812 assignment, right? It's if you just put in PBS, I mean, look at that URL. That's crazy. If you just put in PBS War of 1812 documentary, you should get it. You'll get like 4 or 5 of the exact same video. That actor, I think his name is Joe Montana. You would recognize him as an actor. He's like in like different type of like police and detective type TV shows. He's the narrator of the video. And yeah, and so you go through this information, but at the very least, what I could do all as well is, in addition to just the regurgitated facts of this war, is go over some context here. So say you have a map of the battles. Most of the battles were fought in the Great Lakes area, which makes sense because that's where the war started. Okay, and as you're probably familiar, when you look at Maryland and you look at DC, They burnt the White House to the ground, as you probably know. I guess they literally had a dinner prepared. I mean, they got out that um, uh, just that serendipitously, right? Like lucky. They got out just minutes in time so that the British could enjoy the dinner that they had placed on the table. And so it's crazy. And so they helped themselves to the dinner and they burned it to the ground. And it was in retaliation. We burnt York, and York was their capital of Upper Canada at that time. Why they call the bottom of Canada Upper Canada, I'll never know. But yeah, the Upper Canada's capital, York, we burnt, and so they retaliated with that. But with it, right? I mean, what are some of the narratives that you would read with this war? One is that we developed a sense not only of patriotic unity with this foreign war and this second war against Great Britain, right? Not too long after the War for Independence, but we also with that independence, by the way, we tried to declare at the end of the war cultural independence. So our spelling, we truncated, right? Like honor, Honour. We took the U out, right? Of many words like that, to truncate it and to be symbolic, to say that there is now a particularly American form of English, and it's not as what's the word I'm thinking of? Pompous as the English language, right? We're gonna cut the words shorter, fewer vowels, less pretentious, and we're gonna have ourselves by the 1820s. We're gonna have kind of a renaissance that we're gonna get to soon with the transcendentalists and the other intellectuals of the 1820s through 40s. It's pretty cool stuff. We'll get to that. But there was like a desire to culturally declare independence from England because we had been known, right, institutionally and culturally with the family, government, the economy, etc., as well as culture and as well as biology. We were largely, WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. We were primarily English. And so we wanted to declare our independence of that during and after the War of 1812. Okay. And but also along with that patriotic theme is we're going to have a political consensus amongst people in Congress, president after president, and it didn't matter what party that president was, to go along with Hamilton's plan, with Hamilton's vision, right, of becoming economically self-sufficient so that we no longer are dependent upon Mother England or any other European power or power for that matter, right, for their products and goods, etc. So those themes certainly come out of War of 1812 narratives, and that's something to think of. All right, we got another one. And so let's see here. Sorry. Um, Another one, right? Another theme that seems to stand out. It'd be right. They say salient, standing out like that, would be the the vindictive nature, the vindictive policy that we've had toward Native Americans. When they choose the wrong side in a war, boy, do we make them pay. We have been very vindictive toward Native Americans. And so during this war, right, a lot of the enemy who chose to fight against us with Great Britain, they put, I guess, red ochre on their tomahawks and on their muskets. And so we called the euphemism, right, the other word that we used for that was we called them red sticks. So the red sticks were the bad, quote, Indians, okay, the ones who fought against us. And so, and of course, it was rather predictable why they did or did not fight with us. It largely was, and can you blame them? They're human beings. It was largely perceived self-interest, right? What they thought they would get out of choosing one side or choosing the other. All right. And so, and mind you, that a lot of the tribes supposedly split in half. Many tribes, and this is an interesting theme to me. is because it carries on throughout the 1800s, is many times when they split, right? There seemed to have been a split. The split, it's not perfectly neat. It doesn't fit completely. Okay. I want you to know that there are always exceptions to every rule. But by and large, the dichotomy of splitting what tended to represent different generations. And very often, the younger Native Americans wanted to fight against us. They were more kind of, I say stereotypically, and I don't mean stereotypically for Native Americans. I mean stereotypically for young men. They were kind of stereotypically prideful. And they're like, no, we're demanding our rights. We'll fight if we have to. And then a lot of the elders, right, were more, I hate to say it, they were more resigned and broken and cynical, and kind of fatalistic. And like, no, no, that's like fighting the ocean. We can't win. And so, yeah, so I find that to be really interesting. And so that was another theme that comes out of this war. And they're going to call it at the end of the war for about, goodness, um, the Whig Party began, I think, in response to Jackson. So the Whig Party does not come about until Jackson's elected in 1828. So that's a decent period from 1815 to 1828. Now, I think a couple obscure parties tried to come out, but nothing majorly, and institutionally powerful like our two parties have usually been until the Whigs in 1828. And so they call it the era of good feelings, whereby there was only one party. It was just the Democrats, the Democratic Republicans. They truncated the name to Democrat in 1828. But what's interesting, right, is the Democrats were always libertarian. But these Democrats are going to be all for government involvement in the economy to make us self-sufficient, to make us commercialized, connecting regions with trade, to make us industrialized, to make us urbanized, right, with city growth. And so a person, if you wanted to look into, like a Southern Democrat who was majorly for Hamilton's system, despite, his kind of libertarian upbringing, I would look at Henry Clay if you wanted to look further on your own. We'll get more into Henry Clay some more in the future. But to me, he kind of represents that strange kind of juxtaposition, right? When two seemingly things that are seemingly at odds are side by side. And so you see that juxtaposition in Henry Clay, being an old school Democrat, but yet being for this new economic system. And the very simple way that they justified it was patriotism. Is they wanted, America first. They wanted America to become an economic giant in need of no other country, and it was pretty much that simple. Okay, so at any rate, you have this going on. You have also big land grabs at the end of this war. All right. So you see here the Ohio Valley. They're going to take this area from a lot of native tribes, some of whom were not even Red Sticks, but yes, many of whom were. They're gonna offer literally free titles to land through lottery systems to winners to come to win free land up in this Ohio Valley. And what's interesting to me in the future is that a lot of these men, remember the fancy word they use is parvenu. A parvenu is like nouveau riche, right? Like newly rich, who was poor and humble and upbringing, and suddenly hits the bonanza and hits it big. These people wanted to be parvenus, moving up into this Ohio Valley, and a lot of them were poor, ambitious Southerners coming from the Carolinas, etc., and Virginia. Okay, and so this was their frontier, their second chance. Remember, there's a term they use sometimes. It's called safety valve. They'll say the frontier was always a safety valve because if you have a demographic of people who are very ambitious and expect to become parvenus, but they don't where they presently are, they are stereotypically ripe for rebellion. So it's best, right, to offer them land somewhere else. Get them out of your hair, encourage them to go somewhere else, and throw the Native Americans under the bus and say, take their land. It's yours. We bequeath it to you. So that's what happens here. But what's interesting, right, is the whole idea of, you could take the Southerner out of the South, but sometimes it takes a while to take the South out of the Southerner. So when they came up here, they brought their Southern prejudices with them. And so Abraham Lincoln is going to grow up in this area, and he's going to see abolitionists violently attacked. He's going to take even just moderate stances on behalf of abolitionists and against slavery, and he's gonna feel the wrath of the population of that area. So that's kind of crazy when you think about it. And so at any rate, you not only have the Ohio Valley that was heavily populated and dispossessed from the Native Americans, but also Mississippi, Alabama, and parts of Georgia. You're going to have the first and second Creek Wars with the Creek tribe, and they're going to vindictively take that land from the Creek. And what's going to be instrumental later on is somewhere here in the Mississippi, Alabama area, you have what's known as the Black Belt. And the Black Belt is not because of all the black slaves that are going to be brought there. It's, I guess, the alluvial rich, nitrogen rich black soil down there that was perfect for cotton cultivation. Okay. And so you're going to get people that move there and they love the soil, and it helps them to decide, right? And they're already Southerners, most of them that moved there, right? And so when they move further into the Deep South, they already have Southern principles and tendencies, and then they have this grand opportunity to buy land, to buy a cotton gin, and also, right, to get credit to buy slaves. Very easy credit to buy slaves. So we're going to get to that. And what do you know? Up at the time coming toward the Civil War, the representatives from this area were so stubborn and so adamant about having their way about slavery that they were known as the fire eaters, right? And because a lot of them were kind of parvenus. And we've talked about that, right? With the salutary neglect thesis of us in England, is sometimes you give a poor but ambitious demographic opportunities to strike it rich and have success. Good luck in taking that from them, right? And so that you're going to experience that phenomenon here. And then also at the end of the war, you're going to have two Seminole Wars, okay? And you had Seminole attacks on two cases. And then you also had, right, ever since Carlos III of Spain, Spain had offered the chance for runaway slaves from Georgia and the Carolinas to become Roman Catholic, and in return to be declared free and protected by Spain. So that you had an insistence, right, on their Fifth Amendment right to their property. And so you get a couple attacks, and that was the opening, the justification that our armed forces needed to come into Spanish Florida. And so we're going to end up taking that by 1819 in the Adams-Onis Treaty. And we're not going to fight too many of the Spaniards. Again, we got lucky, just like with England in the War for Independence. England often had bigger fish to fry. England was worried about India, was worried about problems with France, and when they were fighting us and trying to repel our rebellion. They were kind of like with our Vietnam. They needed more to conscript more troops to send over here. And they had just sent in like 1776, they sent 40,000 young men, and there was an uproar about the 40,000 being too high of a number. And so, and you think about Vietnam, right? We had at any given time, I think we averaged around 750,000 boys in Vietnam. Yeah, like 700 something thousand. So at any rate, they just couldn't. It's like they fought us with their hands tied behind their back. And you can make the argument that the same thing happens here. Why? As you'll see in the video, They're fighting the Napoleonic Wars. They're fighting mighty Napoleon, right? And so they have their hands full back in the old world. But of course, they do not want to lose Canada, which they had won in the French and Indian War. And so, as you'll see, we had a three-pronged invasion of Canada, and it did not go well at all. But that was the type of hubris that our leaders were guilty of, right? That type of arrogance that blinds you is that they thought that they could just march right into Canada and the Canadians would voluntarily join us, right? And say, yeah, we don't want to be under Great Britain anymore. And that did not happen. That did not happen. They saw us as foreigners attacking their native soil. Okay. So at any rate, when you watch the video, you'll get good context on that. But going back to the Ohio Valley is sometimes also another thing that happens is when you have a combination of ambiguity and a feeling of inevitability, that has not bode well for the Native Americans. So the ambiguity is we stated in the Northwest Ordinances when we had that failed Confederation, we stated that the Ohio Valley was ours. All right. The Iroquois claimed that the British granted it to them at Fort Stanwix, the Ohio Valley as conquerors over all those other tribes. And the other tribes, of course, fought and contended against that. And so we never definitively took a stand on Fort Stanwix and on the tribes there, because to us, right, it was just inevitable that we were going to take them over. We were going to take that land over. It's just a matter of time. And so it's a methodical process, right? You have to have a certain population up to a certain high number. You have to put everything into 6 square acre plots, have so many of them to make a city, to make a county, to make a state, have a general election, have them go to a convention and write a state constitution and have it approved by Congress. So all kinds of stuff still had to happen, right? But there was a feeling of inevitability that that's going to happen. And this is our land, okay? And so what we did is from the first president, for the first 3 presidents, 4 with Madison included, they put a military governor over the region, but with differing types of commands. Okay, so supposedly, right, George Washington, who's known as just be a Clint Eastwood during the War for Independence, he supposedly initially walked on eggshells with the Native Americans and did not want to fight with them. And so he put in a military governor, and he told him, you have to have my permission to declare martial law. You can't just declare martial law over these natives. I want you to get along well with them, and I want things to go smoothly. And just kind of humor them when they contend that this isn't the Iroquois' land, this is our land. Let them stake it out, let them live there. It's going to take us several generations to take that land anyway. So there's no use in unnecessarily hastening the process of fighting them. And so, but the problem was, right, is I can't recall the man's name, Arthur St. Clair, I think. He was murdered. And so then Washington's like, all right, now I'm not messing around. I'm going to put in Anthony Wayne. And Anthony Wayne was known as Mad Anthony Wade. And as you know, back then, mad meant crazy. And so, so Anthony Wayne came in, and he just came in swinging, and had vicious battles and tried to kick the natives off of all the land in his area where his troops were stationed, and it got pretty nasty. And so then comes in William Henry Harrison, and you'll see him in the video, and he plays the villain in the video, and perhaps rightfully so, because he was quite aggressive and he was quite manipulative and deceitful in his dealings with the Native Americans. He would make promises to them and try to bribe them in kind of a quid pro quo fashion of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And then, but when they said no, that's when he would start getting nasty, and he would try to plant Native American weapons in barracks and contend that there was an attack by the natives. I mean, that kind of stuff, like real kind of deceitful stuff. William Henry Harrison was supposedly guilty of. And so he developed a bad reputation amongst the Native Americans there. And then there was a prophet, and his name was Tenskwatawa. And Tenskwatawa was just generically called the prophet because he supposedly predicted a solar eclipse, and he did a couple other feats that were seen by the Native Americans as evidence of supernatural presence. Okay. And so he starts having rallies, and Harrison right away says, I want to arrest him. And at this time, Madison has to get involved. It was Madison or maybe Jefferson right before him. But at any rate, the president gets involved and says, no, 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 take it easy. He hasn't told the people to rebel against us yet. He hasn't committed any, I think they're thinking something equivalent to the First Amendment, right? That even though that did not apply to the natives, they were seen as a nation within the nation. They still had that kind of a measuring stick in deciding what the prophet could get away with and what he couldn't. But then when it crossed the line in the American president's mind was his brother. Tenskwatawa's brother was the Shawnee warrior Tecumseh. And you'll see stuff on Tecumseh in the video. And so Tecumseh tries to unite people from the different tribes to kick the governor and his troops out. And it's not just the governor and the troops. By the time of Harrison, he is making these very lucrative offers, sometimes on land that natives are still inhabiting, making lucrative offers to American settlers to come and settle in that land. Because he knows, right? It's kind of sad that you have a confession of this a few times in the 1800s by leading politicians where they're deliberate. They know exactly what's going on. And they'll say in writing for us to read later that the first step of conquest is migration and settlement, right? You come in and you outnumber them, and that's the beginning of the end, and they don't even know it. And so at any rate, that's what Harrison, that's the way he thought, trying to get a lot of settlers into that area. And so he gets in a battle at Tippecanoe, and they find British weapons when they're burying the Native Americans that they killed. And so they're going to declare that the British have fomented, right? They have instigated a rebellion amongst our native tribes. That's going to be one of the two official reasons for which we declare war against England or Great Britain. Okay. So at any rate, yeah, you'll see this stuff on the video. I'm trying to think anything else. Let me look down at my writing and the context. Let's see here. Yeah, and then there were two massacres. And you want to talk about, populist anger. Remember, to me, populism is like the ugly side of representative democracy. Populism is when you push the ugly buttons of your constituents, groups that they hate, things that they kind of greedily covet and desire. You run with those things, right? With those sentiments, and you push those buttons amongst your constituents that voted you in. So the Duck Creek Massacre was happened in Kentucky, I believe. Kentucky or Tennessee, I'm sorry, I don't recall. And then Fort Mims, I recall a little bit better. And in Fort Mims, right, the people were told by the British government, and they had reason to believe that also the natives were going to honor it, that if they reported to Fort Mims and put themselves inside the palisaded fort, right, with the logs and the spikes, they put themselves into this palisaded fort, that they would be considered out of bounds as far as, fighting as combatants, because a lot of them were women and children and unarmed people. Well, the Creek banged through and they massacred people at Fort Mims. So people like Andrew Jackson are going to run with this, run with it, and say the Indians must pay. All right. So by the time of the end of the war, a case in which the U.S. Was on the giving end of a great massacre was called Horseshoe Bend. So at Horseshoe Bend, we had Cherokee and other tribal leaders help us capture and ambush the creek, and it was at a river, and a lot of them were trying not to drown and trying to get out of the river, and they mercilessly massacred them as they tried to get out of the river and were cornered and encircled, and so it was evidently it was pretty gruesome. Right. Let's see here. So yeah, it goes over the Napoleonic Wars in the video. Yeah, I have it right here. Battle of Horseshoe Bend. Cherokee helped U.S. catch and slaughter the Creek Red Sticks. So at any rate, the end of the war, there's no change in land ownership. Antebellum status quo. Before the war, the same thing, right? Andrew Jackson's and Harrison's political popularity rise from the war. The Federalist Party goes kaput. They had a convention and they threatened to leave or secede from the Union because they were opposing the war. And this was right at the high tide when they got news of the Battle of New Orleans and Andrew Jackson doing so well at that battle. The Battle of New Orleans was like the Battle of Bunker Hill. The British kind of suicidally, almost stupidly, assaulted a very well defended bastion, just wave after wave, and lost a lot of men in a short amount of time. So at any rate, word gets out about that battle and that victory. And so American patriotic sentiment is at an all-time high. And then the timing of it, right? When the Federalists meet and say that they're against the war, that if the war doesn't end, they're going to leave the Union. And also when they get into their grievances are almost entirely economic. That made them look terrible, right? That trade mainly, right? The trade was disrupted with Great Britain because we're fighting her. And so that was hurting their pocketbook and they didn't like it. So it was a very, very self-harmful political and diplomatic move by the Federalist leaders. And so they were such a public backlash, and they had other issues and weaknesses that they were suffering from, that they just gave up. They gave up as a political party. So that thus begins the era of good feelings with only the Democratic Republicans. And then, like I said here, there's bipartisan consensus that they need to follow Hamilton's system. And we'll get more into Hamilton's system, even though we've already introduced it. We'll get more into it in the future. So I'm going to stop sharing. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find the, let's see here. I'm going to hit share just in case. Let's see. That's not it. Right there. There's test 2. So, all right. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to hit test 2. Okay. I don't see you guys. Okay. That's not good. Maybe I have to hit share. Sorry, I'm learning this right along with you, okay? This new higher version. Okay, how about that? Can you guys see that? Okay, so this is test 2,
Yes, we
right?
can.
Pardon me. All right, so I'm trying to do a balance here, right? Of helping you out, but this is now test 2, and I don't want to go through like every one and like give the answer, okay? If you don't mind. So remember when you talk about the context That's in the introduction of the War for Independence handout. And I don't think you're going to find C, British plans to placate colonial tensions in granting native lands to the colonists. No. Matter of fact, I say the opposite of that and say how they marked off bounds to the colonists, certain Native American lands, trying to make peace with the natives at the end of the French and Indian War. So remember the three theses, if not four. Remember, salutary neglect was that we were left alone, but it had a healthy effect on us, right? And we did as we pleased. Bernard Bailyn was the romantic one, where he says that the French and Scottish Enlightenment and the Great Awakening, right? These ideas were captured by our intelligentsia, our leading intellectuals, and they put it in a form that the common person could absorb, right? So hence, even the common person became enlightened and began to expect certain natural rights, etc., and became intolerant of tyranny. Howard Zinn was that very cynical thesis, remember, where he says the founding fathers that there's no such thing as a colonial front, that you had the very poor, you had the manual laborers, and then you had this well-to-do middle class of like lawyers and so forth of the founding fathers, and they had their own agenda and hijacked the rebellion, right, for their own benefit, used the British as a scapegoat. So recall those, all right, and you should be fine. Let's see here.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Is this the purpose of this like overview of the test, like a post-test review, or are we gonna have like another chance to do it again? Or
Wait, have you guys already done this?
oh yeah, it was due on the 4th.
Oh
Yeah,
my
we
goodness,
took
I'm
it.
sorry, you guys. I wasn't aware of that. I'm sorry. Shoot. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Now, did I give you guys two chances?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. Did you guys do okay?
Well, sort of, not really,
Yeah.
because the thing is, we weren't able to see the answers after it, so we kind of were second guessing ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
So it can be a little difficult there. But I felt like I knew the first 20 questions, which were like the ones we've covered. And then
Sure.
the other 20, I was kind of like using logic and not really any knowledge. So,
Oh shoot,
and
Bryce.
I don't know how
Yeah.
I did on
Let
either
me
Yeah,
let
section.
I
me
agree.
think on the showing the wrong answers, because I hate that, because I feel like there's no happy median, like
Yeah, that's
uh
true.
there when I show when I show the correct answer, then when you take it a second time, you've already been told what the answer is. You know what I mean? And so it's like
Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit too much, but I do want to help you in some way. I truly do. So let me think on that, okay? Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so this was due on the 4th. My goodness, I'm way off.
Right.
Yeah, I'm way off. I apologize. Um, so with that, well, heck, then we're doing Andrew Jackson then. I'm sorry, guys. Let's see here. And please remember, especially when you're doing well on your historiographical assignments, and you don't do so well on the other stuff, on the test mainly. I reserve the right to bump your grade up. Okay, if you're sitting at a high B, I reserve the right to bump you up to an A, and I don't feel badly about that. All right, as far as it being unprofessional. So just keep that in mind, okay, and hang in there. Bryce, did you have a question?
I was wondering how many tests are there? Is there
Three.
four? Three?
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe just three. Yeah. Yeah, we're already working on the material for test three. Oops.
So do we need to finish the material like for test 2 first? Because I believe there was like on today is due the early Republic assignment, and then there's the War of 1812 video, which is on Saturday.
Oh, okay. Well then I'm confused though, because you guys said that, did I say that test two is due on the 4th?
That was the due date within Canvas.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna send a message to everybody, okay? Of course not. There's no way that I should give you material or I should give you a test covering material that you haven't even covered yet, right? That would
Yeah.
I mean I would honest to goodness you guys could go to the dean and I could get in trouble for that. You gotta cover what you're being tested on, you know? And so please know that was an honest mistake. I would never do that. I would never have you guys tested on material that you've yet to cover. So I tell you what I'm going to do, okay? Is I always promise that you're not going to suffer for my mistakes. Is I want to uh, change the date, obviously, send out a message to everyone and tell them how that completely was a mistake, and you're not expected to be tested on material you haven't covered yet. But then also, I'm going to give you unlimited. I don't think I've ever done that on test two, but because I messed up, I'm going to give you unlimited chances at the test. Okay. So, like I said, I always promise you won't suffer. If anything, you'll benefit from my mistakes and not suffer. Because yeah, that I could get in trouble for that. Yeah, and there's no way I should have done that. Shoot. That's okay. So anyway, well then in that case then, right, let's go ahead and kind of go back to it. Because we've covered the last assignment before it. Let's see here. So the Great Awakening is not tied to libertarianism. I'm sorry, the French Enlightenment is not tied to libertarianism. See option C, that doesn't fit. Okay. The Great Awakening was about conditional deference. Remember deference, like in Japanese culture, knowing your place and obeying your superiors. The Great Awakening stressed that you could not, you need not show deference any longer if your leaders are no longer following God's ways and dealing unjustly with you. Then you have the right to rebel, the religious right. Okay. The Scottish libertarians, right? They wanted anything to keep power in check, right? To keep tyranny in check, to keep centralized power in check. Remember, Joseph Ellis uh, contends that Washington's ambitions were thwarted in a system that Washington saw as foolish and unfair. Okay. We got Zen's thesis. Okay, the Articles of Confederation, that is number one on going toward a republic. Remember, right, that they tried democratic, decentralized government and they messed it up themselves by being selfish and rash and self-destructive. Let's see here.
Sorry, which question are we on?
Number 10.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And then with number 11, I'm asking you for data on that. Now, if you're super libertarian and super democratic, are you going to have burdensome taxation? No. Okay. Number 11. Number 12 is number 2 on the turning to a republic assignment on the failure of the Confederation. And remember her cynical thesis about the founding fathers trying to needing a lot of popular pressure applied to them to concede to certain enlightened components. Okay. Then you need to know examples of that on number 13. Like I said, I don't want to give too much, but I want to help you. You'll find that number 14 on number 1 of turning to a republic. And I do not say that state level governments were conservative. Okay. And we've gone over number 15 through lecture. If I don't have it in writing, we technically have a constitutional federal republic. Okay, that's what we have as our government. I don't mean to be smug, but it drives me nuts when politicians say our democracy, our democracy. And I'm like, I don't mean to be a know-it-all, but we don't have a democracy. Will you quit saying that? We have a republic. Anyway, I can't help it. It drives me crazy. Let's see here. The founding fathers, did they devise a laissez-faire capitalist system? No. And that one you had to just put together, right? Because you see a number one in the early republic, how much government intervention there was in the economy. Yeah, Bryce.
What is laissez-faire? I was a little
Laissez-faire,
confused with that.
no problem. I'm not well versed either. I just know the basics that laissez-faire means let it be. The government stay out of the economy and allow the invisible hand of the market to do its job, right? So, for instance, if you don't pay your workers well, they'll work for a rival who does pay them well. If you put too high of a price, your rival will put a lower, more affordable price and undersell you, et cetera, et cetera, right? There was this hope that because, Adam Smith and the others of the Enlightenment were deists. They believe everything was like a great clock that was made, right? Systematically by laws of nature. And so they thought that the economy was no different. And so that if you allow the natural laws of mankind and human nature and economics to do their thing, they'll keep everything balanced and in check. And we've never tried that, right? Because we've always had government intervention. Yeah. So I hope that
And
helped. That's all I
it
know.
also did, okay.
All right. Um, let's see here. The Federalist Papers, they were philosophical, logical, historical defense of the need for a more centralized, less democratic government than the Confederacy. Um, the Federalist Papers were not promoted by libertarians for the reason of A, right? And they did not evoke distrust of stewardship, but they spoke about stewardship. I remember that's the idea when I asked you guys, do you believe that everyone should be entitled to the same protections under law? And everyone, of course, it's kind of a rhetorical question where the answer is obvious in the question itself. Of course you do, right? But do you believe that everyone's equally capable of writing an English paper, of fixing your car? And of course, rhetorically, the answer to that is no. We differ in our gifts and our talents, etc. So likewise, the conservatives thought that the elected men ought to be stewards, like babysitters, entrusted with the public confidence and use their own discretion, their own educational background, their own wisdom, right? In applying laws. So anyway, which of the following was arguably not an enlightened component to the Constitution? Hopefully that one should be fairly easy. Look at B, universal citizenship. Yeah, right. Right? Not even close. So remember, the founding fathers dropped that ball, didn't they, Jonathan? They dropped that ball, and they're like, no, we'll let the states decide who's a citizen and who isn't. It was very cowardly. It was very kind of a cowardly conservative act, but that's the way it happened. And so note, right, we don't get a guarantee of rights in one state are followed by rights in all other states, right? And kind of like really nationalizing the Bill of Rights until the 14th Amendment in 1868, 3 years after the Civil War. So it's going to take a long time. All right, it's about time. Let's see here. Which of the following is not a conservative component to the Constitution? Look at D, that minutes of congressional meetings ought to be published from time to time. That in and of itself is not conservative. That's enlightened, right? Because that's declaring transparency from your politicians. Okay, we've already talked about number 20, about the fact that they think that some people are better prepared to rule on behalf of the people and should be trusted with that. The Anti-Federalists were libertarian, so they didn't oppose libertarianism. And then take a look at number 1 on the early republic, okay? And I'm going to let you do number 22, but that's found on number 1 of the early republic. Same thing as number 23 is number 1. Now, 24 and 25, I tried to put those in number 1, but they may not be found in there. And so instead, I'd like to think, I sure hope, that I lectured on them. And actually, both of them are meant to be true. Okay? Remember, I talked about Washington. He was fearless in the War for Independence. But when he started having the development of pre kind of two-party system, he walked on eggshells. He was he felt precarious. Okay? And so he tried to please both sides and tried to seem like the impartial father figure that was above that kind of factional fray and that kind of fighting and pettiness. And so as you see there with the conservatives, the dignity of his person, he'd come in like a rock star. They deliberately have him come late. You know, this is before modern psychology and what like the fascist dictators did, right? Mussolini had to approve of every single picture that was posted of him. They had to make sure he was always in the right pose and position and didn't look vulnerable in any way, etc. And so, it's kind of pre that with George Washington. And he gave Hamilton a long leash. He declared neutrality in the Continental Wars. He declared executive privilege, things that he doesn't have to share, that he could keep as a secret. He wanted to squash the Whiskey Rebellion. And Jay's Treaty was seen as embarrassing because it did not concede much at all for us, and we gave much to England. And then 25, he had goodwill tours. He had press conferences. He allowed a hostile press, and those things all made the liberals happy. Okay. So David McCullough in John Adams is number 2. Okay. Number 2 of the early Republic handout. So take a look at that. All right. And remember that his thesis, right, was that John Adams was so independent minded, had so much integrity that he alienated both sides. So take a look at the supportive data. Same thing with 27. It's in number 2. Number 28, Hofstadter's thesis is the mom and daddy thesis, right? I don't mean to be a smart aleck, but it's the mom and daddy thesis of Thomas Jefferson. Remember, his mom was super rich, noble, and his dad was a commoner. And that really did a number on his psyche and supposedly on his political leanings as he got older, right? And the way he identified himself as a man of the people, like his dad. Ironies with Jefferson. Look at C. He established democratic institutions in the Louisiana Territory right away? No, he did not. Remember we went over that? True to his belief in the free market of ideas, Jefferson was bipartisan in his appointments? No, it was one more contradiction of that guy. He claimed on paper that you should, but he didn't do it in reality. 31 is found on number 4. Okay. So look for the one that does not fit. That's false. Did he believe in the innate inferiority of African Americans, or did he think it was merely just cultural and historical and circumstantial? Sadly, he wrote that he believed it was innate, that it was biological, and hence nothing could be done about it. It's one more contradiction about this guy. Okay. And then number 33 is the thesis of number 4. So does Brinkley contend in number 4 that forces beyond Jefferson's control made him feel compelled to become pragmatic instead of idealistic? Absolutely. Okay. He became pragmatic instead of idealistic. And then the video, 34 should be a piece of cake. Did we fight the French? The fighting was pretty fierce up in the Northwest in the Ohio Valley, and the fighting was very fierce down in the South, particularly against the Creek. Consequences, we talked about this. That the U.S. would punish red sticks and their tribes regarding land ownership? Absolutely. The U.S. would patriotically try to Americanize customs and institutions away from British influence? Absolutely. A general political consensus that Hamilton's system should make the U.S. economically self-sufficient? Absolutely. The U.S. militarily won Oregon from British Canada? No. Sometimes I'm so random in the one that's wrong. I have to just think of something that's false. So absolutely not. Okay. Number 38, we've mentioned that about the endorsement of slavery in the Constitution. That one's true. And so when I ask you on number 39, which of the following is false regarding the federal component of our Constitution? I'm asking which one of them is false regarding the sharing and balance of power between the states and Washington, D.C. Okay. Let's see here. Which of the following presidents does not match the policies of his or her time? Take a look at C. John Adams. Did he declare neutrality in the Continental Wars? No, George Washington did. Right off the bat, the first president unilaterally decided that our country would stay neutral without congressional, participation or collaboration with him. Okay. So you guys feel a little better about kicking this test butt? Okay, good. Yeah, I will send out a message to everyone. Yeah, of course. Yeah, by all means, when something seems strange like that, by all means, let me know. Because yeah, that I would never do that. I would never test you on material that we haven't even covered yet. Yeah, Griffin.
I mean, this could be a solution, but
Sure.
after we take a test, if you have an answer sheet and maybe some explanations for those answers, then after the due date of the test,
Yeah,
instead of like after taking the test, then you see the answers, but like you just send out like a Google Doc or maybe just
yeah, I can do
a
that.
PDF of the answers and explanations.
Sure.
I think that may work.
You got it. I could do that. That can work. Thank you, Griffin.
Also, I don't know if this is an option, but
Yeah.
instead of showing each one that you got wrong and the correct answers,
Mhm.
is there a way to just show you which ones you got wrong so that you only have to go back and like fact check certain answers? Because it takes a while to like go back and check every single answer.
Oh gosh, you know what? I will have to find out, Jake. I don't have that memorized. I don't know. I'm sorry. But no, once again,
No
I'm making a
problem.
mental note and I'm gonna go back and look and see if that's an option. Because that would be nice to be able to, if, like in retaking it, like you shouldn't have to go back over the ones you've already gotten right. I like that. Yeah, Bryce.
I had a question about the test of, so a couple of the times I was confused with some of the, like, there was definitely some words that I was kind of tripping up about. Are
Sure.
we able to like look up dictionary like type words?
Oh, of
Like what
course, of course.
certain
And you
things
do
mean?
know, right, that because I can't stop you, and to me that would be unfair for those that were had dishonest intentions in doing it. I can't stop you from looking at your handouts. You know what I mean? And so therefore I just go with it on an online class and say, you know what, it's open note. So absolutely, if it's open note, how much more am I okay with you looking up a word so you could better understand what I'm asking you? For sure. Yeah.
And also the handouts you're saying too, like to be able to try to find which ones that you mentioned in there
Yes.
in the sheet.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I will start with the Jacksonian one. I'm going to go back to and begin with the Jacksonian one that's the one that's coming next.
Mhm.
And I'm going to try to add some parenthetical explanations of some words. Yeah, Jake.
Cool.
Can we go back and review some of the first questions?
Sure.
I was making like a few notes and I wasn't able to get a document up before.
Right. All right. So yeah, so like I said, with this one, I was just what I did, Jake, is I explained each of the theses, and then I just assumed in explaining them that you'll be able to get the right answer. You know what I mean? When you know them. So yeah, so I mentioned the first one, right? That it plans to placate colonial tensions and granting Native Americans lands to the colonists. No. Um, so poor enforcement of the English laws is the salutary neglect thesis. Okay, we were neglected, but it had a healthy effect upon us. Uh, Bernard Bailyn, right? He focuses upon the founding fathers' connection to intellectual and philosophical movements. Okay, the French Enlightenment included everything but a libertarian stress upon localized government. That's the Scottish Enlightenment. That's libertarian and for decentralization and small government. The Great Awakening's alleged contribution is conditional deference. All right. The Scottish and English libertarians, they emphasized. Okay, look at the bottom one. That's for surely not true. Unitary centralized power over the local regions. No, they wanted the antithesis to that. Power for the judicial branch to protect numerical minorities. No, that is kind of an older liberal principle, but it's not connected to libertarianism. I'm going backwards here. Institutional checks on power in the form of checks and balances, written constitutions, and elections. Yes. So you're looking at B. A strong legislator with elected representatives trusted to actively protect citizens' rights? No way. Libertarians, right? They distrust people in power. There's no way they would be okay with that. And Ellis's book highlights instances of Washington's ambition being thwarted by a British system that he perceived to be unfair and foolish. Does that help, Jake, or were there more?
Up through 13, I didn't get.
You didn't get up to 13. Let's see here.
I'm trying to write down like all the definitions of and trying to understand the thesis.
So Howard Zinn, right? You look at the founding fathers may have hijacked a popular rebellion and turned the wrath of the masses against a British scapegoat. What was not used as factual evidence? A rising gap between the rich and the poor? No, that's the heart of his right. That's the heart of his evidence. Written complaints of Western colonial subjects about their elected assemblymen? Absolutely. The founding fathers' adherence to Enlightenment beliefs? That one's the one that doesn't fit. Because yeah, some of them did demonstrate evidence of adhering to Enlightenment beliefs, right? But that's not convenient to Zinn's thesis, because to him, right, it was all about their greed and their ambition and their desire for power. So that wouldn't fit. The argumentative section on the Articles of Confederation, that they played into the hands of conservatives by being rash, selfish, destructive. Absolutely. What was not mentioned was burdensome taxation. Pauline Meyer's thesis on ratification contends that the founding fathers essentially needed public pressure from common Americans to make the Constitution as enlightened and democratic as it is. Yes. What was not used as evidence? The Federalist insistence upon the printing of the Constitution? No. Remember, according to that write-up, the Federalists did not want the Constitution printed. They didn't want the common people to participate in this ratification process. So the first one's wrong right off the bat.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a lot easier for you to explain than for me to like try to like go back and read and understand.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. So guys, I think we're finally good. I hope that you guys, like I said, I'm gonna put it unlimited because of the mistake I made. So you guys, by all means, take it until you just completely ace it, if you have the patience to do such. All right. And I will, Jake, I'll look and see if they have the option of that, of on retakes, if you could just address the ones that you got wrong. I have no idea if that is a, a devised, what's the word? I can't think of the word because I'm so ill versed in technology. But if it's an option, I will choose it. All right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
You're welcome.
That'll help a
Okay.
lot.
All right. So yeah, you guys have a good evening, okay, and a good week. And God willing, I'll see you next Thursday, okay?
Awesome. I had one quick question real quick.
Yeah.
I'm trying to calculate to make sure I get at least 100% in the class. How much extra credit do we get per class day?
I give you 5, but I've
Okay.
written stars already on at least one, if not 2 of them, and I'm gonna give you 10 because I took so long. Yeah. So to be honest,
Awesome.
an hour is what I expect to kind of do. So I think you'll get 5 on added to your test score, and 5 added to the War of 1812. Okay, but I know there's at
Perfect.
least one, if not 2, that you're gonna get 10 extra on. Okay, because you guys hung in there for like 2 hours. Okay,
Awesome. Thank you so much
all
again.
right, you're welcome, bud. All right, you guys have a good evening. Okay,
You
You
too.
too.
Have a good
Bye.
evening.
Thank you.
bye bye. You're welcome. Thank you.